Hi, my name's Alan Smith. Welcome to another edition of Performance on the Well. Today, our very special guest is Butch Runyon. Butch and I have done a number of shows together over the years. Butch, this is a very special guitar for you, isn't it?
Yes, sir. I bought this when I was 18 years old. Celebrating 50 years with it this year. So.
Well, it's done you good, right?
Oh, yeah.
Tell us a little about the first story you're going to tell. It's what's actually called The Storyteller.
Yeah, The Storyteller is a story about where I was born. Most of my songs are biographical or autobiographical. I lived up on a hill in Gimlet Holler, so I come down and I go past my grandfather's house, and he'd be sitting up on the porch, and he'd go, "Hey, boy, come here." And I'd go up there, and I'd sit up there in his glider, and I'd roll in Bugler cigarettes when I was about 6 years old. Then he'd tell me all these stories. So later on in life, the interstate came through, took his house, and it moved him down closer to the general store. So I went down to the general store one day, and here he is sitting on the porch. And I said, "Grandpa, what are you doing down here?" He said, "Well, no one comes and visits me anymore, so I come up here to tell my stories." So that's how the Storyteller song started. Hey, 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 hey. You got time for me today? That's my grandpa sitting on the porch of a local general store. He said, "No one wants to hear my tales. They don't visit anymore. So I decided I would write them down. Then when I'm gone, they can take them out, take their time and read them, and maybe even pass them on. Well, my kids are really quite surprised by the things I've seen and done. As I sit and tell the stories to my daughters and my sons. And there were times when I changed things up just to hear what they would say. 'Cause the older I get, the better I was back in the good old days. And he'd say, "Hey, hey, hey, you got time for me?" Spend the day with the storyteller, listening to the older one, so that I could learn to tell my tale to my own daughters and my sons. So I put them into song and I recorded them for my own legacy. Now you can listen if and when you want of how it used to be. Not all were total truth about the fame and glory. They'd say, "What's your point, Dad?" I'd say, "None. I just like to tell the stories." He'd say, "Hey, hey, 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 you got time for me?" Well, I've gotten a lot older, got a lot wiser, got a lot of grandchildren. And these days, all I want to do is just sit out on their front porch. And when one of them walks by, here's what I do. Hey, 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 hey,
Music Mountain. Tell us a little bit about that story. What's behind that?
Well, when we were kids, we used to come down off of that hill at Gimlet Hollow, and then you go down to the creek at Four Pole Creek, and you go underneath the railroad tracks through this culvert to take a shortcut instead of climbing up over the railroad tracks. Well, in 1951, there was a woman that was murdered and buried in this culvert. So I always wanted to write a song about it, and all of us kids were afraid to go over to the playground anymore because we thought it was haunted. So I wrote this song about it, but because of the murder, the real facts were it was so brutal, it's kind of a vague story about Music Mountain.
Interesting.
Stood on the banks of the Ohio, just above the 6th Street Bridge, outside the gates of the flood wall. He can't remember what he did.
They drank so much wine that night.
Was he dreaming or awake? From 14th Street to Music Mountain, let's say a prayer for Goldie's sake. Loose lips and jealous human behavior killed a messenger, but not the betrayer. Another woman, wrong place, wrong time. He took Goldie's life. What a senseless crime. Since 51, kids take the long way round from Four Pole Creek and the culvert stream. Strange sound from a tortured soul. They say they often hear Goldie scream. Loose lips and jealous human behavior. I killed the messenger, but not the betrayer. He said what she said was a vicious lie. His girl never cheated. Goldie had to die.